What is up, everybody? This is JP, your online personal trainer, and today I'm making a video on how to fix your broken shoulders, your jacked up shoulders. I personally have firsthand experience with this. I've never had shoulder surgery or nothing like that, but in the past I've had bad shoulder impingement. I think it might have been bicep tendonitis, whatever it was. This was before, when I first started personal training, two, 3 years ago when I started learning and stuff. But it got bad to the point where I couldn't even bench with the bar. Like, obviously I was able to do it, I had the strength to, but it would just hurt so bad. I couldn't even do 10 reps. I mean, I tried all the best mechanics for doing the proper exercise technique, making sure my shoulder blades were retracted and depressed, but it really didn't, it didn't do much. I even tried, most people bench with the overhand, internally rotated. Then I tried to bench with the supinated grip instead to see if it helps. It didn't help. I know that is a good technique, which I'll talk about in a little bit, but nothing worked for me. So hopefully, I'm going to give you some pretty valuable tips and advice on how to fix your broken shoulders. It's going to be a little bit long of a video, but please stick around. It'll really help you. All right, first to start off is you need to train your rotator cuff. You need to train your rotator cuff. And by that is, in whatever workout plan you have, usually people base it around a week. Usually they have all their workouts laid out in a week. And then when the week ends, they restart from whatever day one, leg day or chest day. But whatever in that week, you need to have exercises that specifically target your rotator cuff. Again, if you don't know what that does, your arms, you can internally rotate and externally rotate your arms. It also may look like this: externally rotate and internally rotate, or externally rotate and internally rotate. You need to train those muscle groups that do just those internal and external rotations. If you don't train those, you're not going to really have stable shoulders, and it may lead to compromises on your big lifts like your bench press, and even things like with your legs, like your deadlift or an overhead press, things like that. And that's not even a bad scenario. A worst case scenario, you tear your rotator cuff and you can't do any upper body movements. So, I'll do a video about it later. You could also look it up yourself. I'm not trying to get too into each point, but do exercises for your rotator cuff. Again, you could do cable external rotations. I have a marker here, but if it was a dumbbell and I was laying on my side, you can do external rotations like that, external rotations like this, standing up. You can do face pulls with an external rotation. There are exercises that specifically target your rotator cuff, and you need to train them. I would recommend doing it, not high reps, not heavy, high reps, 2 or 3 times a week, low volume, just maybe 4 or 5 sets each time, for whatever you're doing. And usually broken shoulders are correlated with weak external rotators. So focus more on your external rotations than your internal rotations. Your internal rotations, the reason most people have problems is because they're always pressing. They're doing pressing movements, which brings us into our next point: balance muscle group ratios. And by that I mean most people, and I don't want to say beginner lifters only, but it happens a lot with beginner lifters. And as you get more of an advanced, you become more of an advanced lifter, you will learn more, you become more educated about, the science of exercise. You realize that you have to balance pulling and pushing movements. And no, just balancing pulling and pushing movements is not how you fix a messed up shoulders. That's not how it is. Yes, it does help though. It does help a lot. So a lot of people, they have, more pushing movements than pulling movements. People only like to work the show muscles. If you stand in front of a mirror, the muscles that you can see are the muscles people like to work. I know guys, I've seen guys before, the second they get into the gym, what do they hop on? The first thing they hop on, you could probably guess it, it's the bench press. It's the first thing to do, which again, it's going to cause problems when you're always working the same muscle group. You're just never giving it a chance to rest. And on top of that, let's just say you do give it proper rest time. They still really don't do back movements. They don't do pull-ups. They don't do rows to the same extent. Like I said from the first point, they don't do any external rotations. They don't work rear delts. They don't work traps. They don't work rhomboids. They just really work nothing that's going to help the shoulders or the back and keep a proper ratio. This causes a lot of problems. It causes, because you're always working these front muscles become tight, and you have a forward-rounded shoulder when you should probably be more upright, standing more proper. But again, you need to look at your program throughout a week and say, how many times am I working my pressing movements, upper body pressing movements, versus my upper body pulling movements? If they don't have at least an equal ratio, or slightly more pulling movements, depending on if your shoulders are really messed up, then that's probably one of the things that's affecting your shoulder issue. Third one, probably heard it a million times before. You need to stretch. You need to stretch your upper body, specifically your shoulder. You have to stretch. You have to make sure that you can get a proper range of motion. For someone who has messed up shoulders, which I'm assuming you're watching this video and you're the one who with messed up shoulders, I would recommend at least 3 or 4 times a week stretching. Once your shoulders become healthier, you can cut it down to 2 times a week, but I would still go no lower than 2 times a week. So always at least 2 times a week, stretch your shoulders. And by stretch, I mean stretch them in all different types of ways. You can stand in front, like in the middle of a doorway, and have your arms on the sides of the door and kind of externally rotate your hands like that, so you can stretch your subscapularis, your pec minor, your pec major. You basically stretch everything around your chest area. It just gets so tight in here from always doing pressing movements. And you know, this day and age, people are always sitting on computers, writing, looking at their phone like this, that this all becomes tight and you have to stretch it out. Again, find a good stretching program and you need to stretch. Ask yourself right now, am I stretching at least twice a week? If not, preferably 3 or 4 times a week. If your shoulders are really messed up, you need to stretch. If you're not, that's already going to be contributing to the problem. Okay, number 4, it's proper periodization. Okay, and I talked about this when I was talking about number 2. You need to make sure that you're not, even if you have a proper ratio of pulling to pushing movements, you need to make sure you're not doing pushing movements too often. Okay, if you're working pushing movements 3 or 4 times a week and your shoulders are messed up, you probably need to tone it back a little bit. I would probably recommend twice a week is a great amount for hypertrophy, a great amount to develop strength. You don't get too much time off between workouts. If you do like a Monday and a Thursday, you really only have, even after your Thursday workout, you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, 3 days, and then you have your 4th day is already another pushing movement. Yes, I'm not saying that 2 times a week is the most optimal. You know, if you have completely healthy shoulders and you want to see the most results, you may even want to go 3 times a week with less volume. You got to give or take one or the other, frequency, volume, and intensity. But that's a whole other subject. But you need to make sure that you're not just doing pressing movements that often. Even if everything else is in check, if you're just doing them too often, that can be a problem. You know, there is a such thing as overuse. If your shoulders are jacked up to the point where you're not injured, like you don't need surgery, but they just hurt every time you're doing something, you probably just need to take a break and then restart, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Number 5 is proper exercise selection and technique, okay? There are just certain exercises that you need to not do, and there are certain techniques you need to do during pressing movements. Obviously, when you're doing pressing movements like bench press, you need to make sure your shoulder blades are down, and then back together. You know, if anything, just keep your chest up and proud. So when you get on the bench, you need to tell yourself, okay, if you're laying on the bench, up and proud, and keep your shoulder blades together. That's really going to help create room in the shoulder so that you don't have a lot of grinding going on in there. And causing that pain. Those nerves are not getting hit and causing pain. And other things too, you know, with proper exercise, you know, like selection. There are certain exercises, which is going to bring me to my next point, that you should just not do. Now look, this may trigger some people or get you mad or because you heard it somewhere else. I don't care what you say. Yes, some people may be able to do these exercises, but for someone, again, this video is about how to fix jacked up shoulders. If you have jacked up shoulders, I just would stay away from these exercises. You can find better alternatives, and you can still develop a well-rounded physique without these. And honestly, I don't do these at all. I've seen extremely good bodybuilders and people who work out who just don't do these exercises because you don't need them. And that goes to, do not do behind the neck presses or behind the neck pull-ups, period. You don't need to do them. They're just not necessary. Again, it simply comes down to the fact that people do not have that range of motion, okay? They just don't. You know, if you take someone, you put their hands right here, and you see how far you can go back, for a lot of people, it usually feels pretty uncomfortable coming way back here. And then especially on top of that, because it's, you know, past your normal range of motion, loading it with weight is not a good exercise either. It's not a good thing to do either. I mean, it's just all bad, you know? You have jacked up shoulders because your mobility is probably bad. Your mobility and your flexibility, those are different. So it's probably bad. So putting your shoulders in a position where you're not used to with weight on top of it is just a recipe for disaster right there. So you just don't want to do that. Again, I don't care if someone else does that. They are not you. So if you say, well, I see this guy and he has no problems. One, he may have superb mobility and flexibility. There are few people, very few people who can do that and be okay. Very few. Still wouldn't recommend it though. Two, just because someone doesn't have problems right now doesn't mean they won't have problems later. Sometimes it takes years to develop problems and you'll never know. So just don't do them. The second one, do not do upright rows. Just do not do them. If you look at what an upright row is, you're internally rotating your arm with an excessive amount of weight. Just like I said at number one, when you train your rotator cuff, you want to do higher reps, lighter weight. They're not super ultra strong muscle groups. It's not a huge muscle group. It's just made for stability of your shoulder. So again, I wouldn't, if you're doing an upright row and you're coming up here, this is an internal rotation. If you're doing 20, 25, 30 pounds of barbell and it's pulling your shoulder down like that, it's gonna hurt. Over time, it's gonna start causing you pain. You can even test that with yourself. Just stand up and keep going like this. Eventually, you might feel some discomfort or pain. I'm not saying hurt yourself, but now imagine what you're doing with an upright row where you have weight going against it, a lot of weight, And again, for the people who are trying to sit there and argue about it, you're probably going to say something like, well, I've heard people say you need to have your hands higher than your elbows. You need to go wider. If you still go wide, you're still causing internal rotation at the arm. You still think about it. If you're wide out here and you're going like that, your arms are still dragging down. You only have so much range of motion at your shoulder joint, especially for someone with jacked up shoulders, that you just shouldn't be doing that exercise. I don't get why someone would do that. If you want to work your traps, do a shrug. If you want to work your side delts, then do lateral raises. If you want to work your front delts, you could just do front raises, or you can just stick to overhead presses with proper technique. And even some exercises, like overhead presses, are something that I'm not against. You can continue doing those. But those, even though they are a good exercise, they may still cause you problems. Before you fix all these, then you'll be able to do them. But even if I still believe they're a great exercise. They're one of the best you can do for shoulders, like an overhead press. But if you don't fix these things, they still may hurt. So just stay away from upright rows. Find a different exercise, and even if they don't cause you pain, just don't do them. The last one is flared elbow presses, and by that I mean if you think of like a pressing movement, like a push-up, a bench press, anything that's like a horizontal pushing movement, do not flare your elbows directly out to the sides. The best way to think about this is when you're doing a push-up, do not make a T. If you see my arms right here, they're looking like a T. What you want to do is you want to make, I've heard people call it a reverse Y or an elbow. Come down like this. If you look, with my body, I'm making about a 45-degree angle. You can even go a little higher if you want, about right here, but you do not want to make a direct T. You want to stay a little bit closer to your body. You want your elbows a little bit tucked in. So bench press, push-ups, whatever it is, do not flare out your elbows. It's just going to cause more problem. Again, it comes down to it comes down to the same mechanics of like a behind the neck press or behind the neck pull-up. You just don't have that range of motion. If you put your elbows closer to your body and you come down like this, if you think about the ground or a barbell, especially if you're keeping your chest up, it's going to stop you about right here. And my humerus isn't that far behind my body. It's really not. It's only about right there. Now, if you come directly out like a T, look how far my humerus gets behind my body before I would, like, let's just say before I would hit the ground or during a push-up or before the bar would hit my chest. My humerus comes way back behind my body. And again, most people cannot hold their humerus way back here under load. It's not good on your shoulder. Your shoulder's not meant to go that far back under that much load, especially with guys who put so much weight on the bar. It's just not good. So again, no flared out elbow presses. Oh, and I skipped one. I'm gonna go back to that one. This one again may be a little bit controversial, but I still recommend it. Do not use full range of motion on everything. I'm not going against the full range of motion. Full range of motion is good for certain exercises. Again, if you're keeping your elbows slightly tucked in and you're keeping your chest up and your shoulder blades pinched down and back, yes, then it is good to go maybe down to the ground if you want on a push-up, if you feel no pain, if you feel no discomfort. But you don't necessarily have to. If you feel pain going all the way down on a push-up or all the way down on a bench press, you do not need to. You don't have to go down all the way down. Again, if you have completely healthy shoulders and You want to go all the way down, that's fine, but I wouldn't recommend it for someone with jacked up shoulders because that could be causing the problem, especially with things like dips. Again, if you look at a dip, when you're going down a dip, your arms come back. Again, if you stand completely straight and you go like this, my arms can only really go that far back, even if I try to go as far back as I can. Now, if you look at a dip, if you look at my humerus in this position, and you think about going way back here with a dip, your arms are kind of going into an abnormal range of motion based off of it just being shoved down with a resistance. So if you do that over and over and over and over, pushing your humerus past the range of motion that it can normally not reach just by forcing it down with your own body weight, it's going to cause problems. It's going to cause a lot of problems. So do not use full range of motion. And depending on what style of training you're doing, that may be completely okay, or it may be kind of hard not to. For example, if you're a power lifter and you have to touch the bar to your chest on a bench press, then that might not be something that you can't do, because you have to do that because based off of competition, you have to touch the bar to your chest, which then you may have to work on other things like maybe arching your back a little bit more so it decreases the range of motion, whatever it is you want to do. But for someone training for hypertrophy, you don't necessarily need to touch your chest to the ground or touch the bar to your chest, since hypertrophy doesn't really, honestly, range of motion matters, but not those last 2 inches to touch your chest. You know, you can still get a good range of motion without going all the way down. You can check out my hypertrophy video on my page, and I will go over the requirements of hypertrophy on there. So yeah, you don't necessarily need to touch all the way down. So just consider that, and consider, well, I have been feeling pain when I go all the way down in a bench press. Instead of touching your chest on the bench press, why not go to about 2 or 3 inches up, stop, and then go back up? One, it's going to increase the time under tension. Two, it's not going to take any resistance off the working muscle. So there are some benefits of not going all the way down. Ultimately, to wrap all these things up, if your shoulders, like I said, there's 2 things you need to do. If your shoulders are so jacked up to the point where you can't even like move them, or you're like have an extreme loss of range of motion, like you can't lift your arm over your head, you need to go to the doctors, have them check that out, maybe do an x-ray, an MRI, whatever they want to do. See if you tore anything, see if you hurt anything, you know, I mean, whatever it is, hopefully you didn't. Now, if you didn't tear anything, it's just really sore and it's only hurt during certain exercises, and you try a few of these things or they're not working, what I would recommend is just take like 2 weeks off from any upper body movements, maybe like 10 days, don't do anything. What I want you to do when it comes to exercise, don't do anything. What I want you to do during the 2 weeks is stretch, and just work on some light rotator cuff exercises. Maybe, like I said, 2 or 3 times a week, and stretch. Don't do anything else but that. Just do those 2 things. Now, after the 2 weeks is up, make your new workout program, or whatever workout program you were doing, make sure it has the other components. You still continue to work on your rotator cuff. You still continue to have, you still continue to have a proper ratios of pulling and pushing movements. You still stretch. That you're not doing too many pressing movements. Start slowly and build up from there. You may need to start from block 1, build healthy, strong shoulders, work up from there. And then if you keep these, don't forget about these. Once you get okay shoulders and your shoulders are fine, don't say, oh, well, I'm okay, I don't need to do those anymore. Yes, stretching sucks. I hate it. The shit's boring. I don't like doing stretching, but you got to do it if you want healthy shoulders. Again, if you like these types of videos, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to link my Facebook page below. I post there daily. If you have any questions, you can comment on there. If you know a friend, someone who's jacking their shoulders up, doing some stuff that they're not supposed to, doing upright rows like, bro lifting or whatever, send them to my video, man. Show them that there is a smarter and better way to train, and you can train smart but train aggressively at the same time. So it's aggression plus intelligence, not just raw aggression, throwing weights around, because that's how you end up hurting yourself. But again, please, if you have any comments, leave them below. But until next time, peace.